Morning everybody, welcome back to Sandy Bottom Homestead. Just like I said, we're gonna break this down piece by piece. I look the same because it's the same day, but I just figured it would be easier for you guys to digest this stuff piece by piece. And when you're ready, if you want, there's gonna be a video with all this stuff put together, plus some in it, and it'll really help you getting your seed starting going. And if you want to start some seeds and you want to schedule for it, you can hit me up in the email below. We'll get you a seed starting schedule. It's not free. I make them all by hand. So just remember that. But just go ahead and email me with your city and state. And if your zip code would be really nice, it'll help to be more precise and we can get you going. But one of the things that seeds and plants need are food, right? And I know what you're thinking right now. You're like, hey, Ben, which by the way, my name is Ben, it's not Sandy. And my homestead's not that because my name's not Sandy and my bottom's not Sandy. It's just based on the soil that we have. But you're like, hey, Ben, I thought that the light gave it the food. Well, you could be correct, but we need to supplement that food. So we give it this right here. If I get one kernel out, I don't know if you can see that, but that is Osmocote. So we put Osmocote in there. It's a balanced 10-10-10 fertilizer. It is a synthetic fertilizer. We are a mostly organic homestead, but this really works out to start because it's a light, gentle feeding every time it waters, and it's not invasive on it at all. It's really, really hard to burn the plants with it. And then we switch over. Before we get the plants out to harden off and everything, we switch over to an organic feeding, but there will be more on that in the longer video. I want to try and keep this one under 10 minutes. I talk a lot, I know that, I'm sorry. So we're going to try and get these fertilized, and I have a tray that has not been fertilized yet, so I'm going to show you that process, and it's really easy, and this will just help you get going in the right direction. So we've got 2 trays of cabbage here, and they were both started on the same day. So this is Bobcat cabbage, which is a hybrid, and this is a golden acre cabbage, which is an heirloom. And it's important in this conversation that you know that. So 2 reasons why. One, because I'm testing to see which one will produce bigger, or basically which one I'm happier with. I'm pretty sure that the hybrids will be bigger and faster, but overall experience, I want to test them both out across the board. And you can see that the golden acre is in fact smaller than the bobcat. So I want to fertilize this golden acre before I give it this bobcat to this bobcat. Now that may mean that this will only get 1 feeding. And when I mean feeding, because we're using the Osmocote, it'll be just putting the fertilizer on it and watering it, and that could be 1 feeding. But what we want to do is we want to go ahead and get this one going and give it more time to get and process some of this fertilizer to catch up to this hybrid, which is naturally going to outgrow this golden acre. Before I drop the almighty fertilizer on there, I do want to say this. In gardening, typically, if it's not a liquid synthetic, and I have to say that because this is technically a synthetic fertilizer, if it's not a liquid synthetic, I don't typically measure anything. It's all basically eyeball. I mean, if something calls for a tablespoon, you know about what a tablespoon looks like. So I don't really measure anything, so I can't give you exact measurements. When we use our organic fertilizers like our fish and seaweed, our Agro Thrive, anything like that, we still don't really measure. We just glug it, you know, 1, 2, something like that, just depending on the container and what we're using. But for this, it's the exact same thing. Because this is a slow release and only release when it's watered, we don't really have to worry about it, and that's what I like. And plus, it doesn't smell bad. So this Osmocote, which feeds these, whatever I put in there will feed that plant for up to 4 months, as the package says. So for 4 months, once I put this in, we're good to go. I don't have to do anything else technically. Now I do more, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Since this is a one-handed operation, and for the record, I am gonna come back and thin these out as soon as the video is over, but we're gonna go ahead and just drop the fertilizer in because that's what this is about. All I do is come through and just put some on there. That's it. It's nothing crazy. The first one's kind of a pain because the light's in the way, so everything gets a little bouncy. But we'll just come through and pour some fertilizer in. Nothing major. And you can see everything's getting a little dose. We go on and do the rest just like that. And so then we'll water it and it'll immediately start to get fed. So I want to water it deeply to kind of saturate that pellet so it can start to crack. But then after that, we're good to go. Now, I use Osmocote year-round, well, during the growing season for my bonsai trees, and I've used it for probably, as much as I hate to admit it, 15 years. I've used it, and the reason why I hate to admit it is just because it makes me sound way older than I am. I got into bonsai when I was a lot younger. Don't let the gray fool y'all. So, you know, I've used it for years there. It works great. And I've always done a little bit of organic in everything that I do. My food is 99% organic, but this just, once I started using it, it made it so much easier. There wasn't any more of a stinky mess, and it just kind of just played out just right. So make sure that if you do use something like this, go for it. A lot of people ask, like, hey, can I mix it in the soil beforehand and organic fertilizers? Now here's the deal with organic fertilizers, and you'll hear me say this again, but I'm gonna say it every time because it needs to be heard and it needs to be repeated. Organic fertilizers take 2 to 3 weeks once it's worked into the soil to break down to start to feed this plant. Think about that for a second. Synthetic fertilizers will work immediately. So in an instance like this, when I'm trying to ramp up my growth quickly to get this plant outside, to get it hardened off and put in my garden so I can race the clock, because in my area, if I don't get these cold weather crops out in time, they're gonna bolt and I'm gonna waste my time. So I've got to do it quickly. I don't have time to wait for that. And when I start feeding my plants is when I get 2 true leaves, and that may be a month after I start them. So I don't want that seed to be fed for a month, for 2 weeks, 3 weeks before I need it to, because then you can injure the plant. So that's why I don't mix it into the soil, and I don't recommend you do. You shouldn't have to. The seed's designed not to have to, and it just works out a lot better. So I like to control my aspect of feeding completely on my seedlings. So just keep that in mind when you're doing this stuff. I would hesitate dramatically from 2 things. Watering with synthetic fertilizer, like a water-soluble fertilizer, and mixing fertilizer into your soil at planting. I would steer away from that. And one is, you don't know how much of the synthetic fertilizer you're putting in or when it's going to be added to it. And the water-soluble fertilizer that you water in, like a Miracle-Gro or something, if you don't do it right, you can actually burn your plants and kill them. And we don't want to do that. So this is the safest method I've found. And I think it's okay to do that. I'm a big believer in organic gardening, and I like it. I like what it does. I like the nutrients it puts back in, the biodiversity and all that stuff. What good is all that if I can't get the plant in the ground? I mean, it's just that simple. I got to get the plant in the ground, and I got to get it in the ground in a timely fashion. And so by using this fertilizer, I can also speed up or slow down how fast this plant grows, just like you see me doing with these 2 trays right here. I'm speeding this one up, and technically by not feeding this one, I'm slowing it down. And that's what you want to do, because then that gives you time and it gives you more control to get things up to par in the way they need to. If you fertilize your seedlings, let us know in the comments below how you fertilize your seedlings and what you're using. If you don't have to say a product, just whatever, I don't care. Just let us know in the comments below, because there's going to be a lot of people with a lot of questions, guarantee that. And it's very tricky. But once you get the hang of it and you start to see the results, and you just got to test, just got to try a little bit. A lot of people don't start the amount of seedlings I do. And I understand that some of you may be happy with 1 shelf, and then you could take 1 shelf and then use the rest for storage. That would be really nice. But if you had one shelf, you can do one tray of one fertilizer, one tray of another, one tray of another, and see which one you like. Test it out. There's no right or wrong. There's just success and failure.